Stop before you take another sip of tea. What if everything you knew about milk and tea was completely wrong? Most people think it's just a British preference, a quirk, a habit, but it's not. It's a 300-year-old class war hiding inside your cup. And once you know the real story, you'll never look at a cup of tea the same way again. Here's a question that sounds simple, but absolutely isn't. Why do the British put milk in their tea? Ask someone on the street in London and they'll say, it just tastes better. Ask a food historian and they'll look at you like you just opened a 300-year-old mystery, 'cause you did. Right now, Britain drinks approximately 100 million cups of tea every single day. That's more tea per person than almost any country outside Asia. And in nearly every single one of those cups, there's milk. But here's what nobody tells you. Adding milk to tea wasn't always normal. It wasn't always common. And it definitely wasn't always associated with being British at all. So how did it become the most defining food ritual in an entire nation's identity? The answer involves fragile porcelain, a brutal class divide, a queen, colonial trade routes, and one of the strangest social battles in culinary history. Stay with me, because by the end of this video, you're going to know something that will completely stop a dinner table conversation. Let's go back to the early 1700s. Tea has just arrived in Britain from China, carried by the East India Company. It's expensive, it's exotic, and it's suddenly the most fashionable drink among the wealthy elite. But here's the problem nobody talks about: the cups. In the 1700s, British porcelain technology was extremely primitive compared to Chinese craftsmanship. British teacups were thick, heavy, and, critically, they cracked under boiling water. Pouring scalding hot tea directly into a British cup could split it right down the middle. So what did people start doing? They poured a small amount of cold milk into the cup first. The milk lowered the temperature just enough to protect the porcelain from cracking. This wasn't a taste preference. This was engineering. Milk in tea was originally a survival strategy for your expensive cup collection. According to food historian Sades by Paul Friedman at Yale University, this practical solution quickly became normalized across British households. But here's where it gets fascinating, because normalized doesn't mean equal, and that's where the class war begins. Because if milk in tea started as a solution to fragile cups, why are people still doing it 300 years later? That answer is far more complicated and far more interesting. Here's where the story gets remarkable. By the mid-1700s, British porcelain technology had dramatically improved. Josiah Wedgwood and other manufacturers were producing cups that could absolutely handle boiling water without cracking. The original problem? Completely solved. But people kept putting milk in tea anyway. Why? Because the ritual had transformed into something far more powerful than practicality. It had become a social signal. Here's what historians discovered. Wealthy families with high-quality porcelain began pouring tea first, then adding milk. This proved their cups were strong enough to handle the heat. It was a display of status, a subtle, silent flex at the tea table. Lower-income households, using cheaper and more fragile cups, still needed to pour milk first to protect them. So the sequence, milk first or tea first, became a remarkably precise class identifier in 18th and 19th century Britain. According to research cited in The Englishman's Food by J.C. Drummond and Anne Wilbraham, this tea ritual was one of the most sophisticated social sorting mechanisms of the era. You could identify someone's economic class simply by watching how they prepared their cup. Think about that for a second. Your cup of tea was essentially a social passport. Pour milk first, working class. Pour tea first, upper class. No conversation required. But that still doesn't explain why milk in tea became universal across all classes. That shift came from somewhere completely unexpected, and it involved an empire. By the 1800s, Britain controlled an extraordinary amount of the world's tea supply, primarily through colonial dominance over India and Ceylon, which is modern-day Sri Lanka. British-grown Indian tea, specifically Assam and Darjeeling varieties, was dramatically stronger and more bitter than the delicate Chinese teas the upper class originally favored. You couldn't drink Assam tea straight without wincing. It was almost aggressively intense. But add milk, suddenly it became smooth, rich, and completely drinkable. This is the moment milk and tea stopped being a class signal and became a national necessity. The British Empire had built its economy around Indian tea production. It needed people to drink enormous quantities of it, and milk made that possible. The Tea Council, a powerful British industry organization, reportedly ran aggressive campaigns throughout the late 1800s and early 1900s, promoting milky tea as the patriotic, working-class British drink. Factory workers received tea breaks specifically designed around this strong, milky brew. According to a 2003 study published in the European Journal of Clinical Nutrition, adding milk to tea also reduces the absorption of tannins, the compounds responsible for that harsh, bitter taste. So there was genuine biological logic reinforcing the cultural habit. By the time World War II ended, milky tea wasn't just a preference. It was identity. It was comfort. It was what Britain ran on. But here's the final twist. The one detail that makes this entire story feel almost poetic. Today, in 2024, Britain is still actively arguing about milk in tea. Not whether to add it, almost everyone does. The argument is about when. Milk first or tea first? This 300-year-old class debate has never actually ended. It just changed form. In 2003, a Royal Society of Chemistry researcher named Dr. Andrew Stapley published a report genuinely titled How to Make a Perfect Cup of Tea, claiming that, scientifically, milk should go in first. His reasoning? Pouring hot tea into cold milk creates a more uniform temperature distribution, which prevents the milk proteins from denaturing and producing that slightly bitter, scalded taste. The report sparked a national conversation. Newspapers covered it, Parliament members reportedly commented on it, the BBC ran segments about it. Milk first versus tea first, a question that started in fragile porcelain cups in 1710, is still generating genuine cultural debate in one of the world's most powerful countries. And here's what that reveals about food rituals in general. They almost never stay what they started as. A practical solution becomes a class signal. A class signal becomes a national identity. A national identity becomes a scientific controversy. Every single layer of this story was hiding inside one simple habit that 100 million people perform every single day, often without asking why. That's the real power of food rituals. They carry 300 years of history in a single gesture, and most people never think to look. So, milk first or tea first? Drop your answer in the comments right now. I genuinely want to know which side you're on. If this video revealed something that surprised you, hit subscribe, because every single day uncovers exactly these kinds of hidden stories. Next up, why 100 million Ethiopians eat from a single plate with their bare hands and why it's considered the deepest form of trust in their culture. You won't want to miss it.